Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Spam Robocallers. This is the U.S. credit card company calling with important information. Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Hera, the ambitious game from Grim Pop Studios. Pick up Hera. It's totally fun. Welcome, everybody, to the Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers. We dabble in the art, the medium of film, whether that's corporate videos or I write and direct 360 content, VR films. We've picked up an award or two, actually. It's funny. I'm not good at like blowing my trumpet. I'm terrible. Like if it's, I have this really bad sinking feeling that if it isn't like Cannes or Sundance or South by, that no one cares. And that might actually be true, but it doesn't necessarily mean, that it's worthless, that, you win an award at whatever, a New York advertising festival that you didn't even submit to, that stuff isn't worth something. And so, yeah, we do all this stuff behind the camera, sometimes in front of the camera. We're actors. And we try to use that knowledge to look at films and TV shows and see what makes them tick. What do we learn from them? Why do they work? Why do they not work? And see if we can get better at the filmmaking process. And maybe, learn something about ourselves along the way, Todd. I don't know.
So tell me a little bit about, you mentioned that you do 360. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think we've seen those 360 cameras that capture 360 degrees around it. So the weird thing about that is you put a 360 camera down, it can see everything around it, and you can effectively imagine your head as a 360 camera. And if you, no matter where you look, right? If you look up, if you look down, if you turn around and look the other direction, if you look down, you can see everything. And so a 360 camera takes 360 footage. It sees in like a sphere. If you imagine a sphere, and that whole thing is one big lens. And then in post, you edit it and you put on your VR headset. Now your head is effectively where that camera was. And that's kind of the best way to think about it, is your head in a VR headset is exactly wherever that camera was. And so you can look anywhere, and whatever the camera could see is what you can now see. And it requires a lot of thinking around the curve, because that also means you can't really put lights into the set, right? 2D normal cameras, right? You have a limited field of view. And so you have like your 50 millimeter lens, and you're looking at someone doing an interview on a couch, and maybe all you can see is their shoulders and their head. And so you can have this nice, Kino flow or LED light giving off all this nice light so that you can see their face really well. Well, you can't have that light in a 360 set necessarily without a lot of heartache, because if you put it there, you don't want it there in the final edit. You don't want to break that experience of there's a reason why we don't see, the fill light or the bounce or the sound operator, right? The boom op is right off camera. And if you're shooting 360, you can see all that. That's right there in front of you. And so if you want to use all those things, which is not advisable, it also means that you need to get a boilerplate shot, a template shot, so that in post, you can erase effectively all those people, all those lights, right? That's just a nightmare. You don't want to do that because it also creates some weird artifacts in terms of where is all that light coming from? It doesn't make sense anymore. It just kind of breaks the experience. And so shooting on location, you have to find out, where's my light coming from? Where can we hide the crew? And so normally I'm sitting around a corner with my producer and my DP, and we have a whole table there filled with like laptops and iPads, and we're able to watch and adjust the settings of the camera and hit record and hit stop. The microphone is usually like sitting right below the camera, and then we also have lavs on hidden on our actors. So it's just a it's a minefield of production, because then too, you can't move the camera around, right? You can't just say, oh, we're going to push in for a close up. Well, you do that. For one, you have to figure out how do you move the camera. And now you have this motorized like dolly happening. So that audio can creep in, but then even worse, in a headset, if the camera starts moving, you get nauseous because that sense of your inner ear is being completely thrown off, unless you just happen to be walking forward as well. And so there's all these things happening that, okay, well then how do you get a close up? Well, now you have to stage and block it. Now your actor has to start in a medium and have them walk into the camera. But then you can only get so close because it's really not just one camera. It's like 6 cameras. And so there's stitch lines, and you want to make sure everything happening in one camera is not going to create some weird stitching error. It's a lot happening going on in there. And these are all the things.
How did you get into that?
It's so funny because, our friend Ricky Holm, who I met after he got out of film school, he moved to Austin, and he worked as a producer and as a DP on a few of my projects. And then, we did a short film not long after, just kind of testing what we have access to, like, oh, let's just make something. And which was a really expensive, let's just make something experiment for me, by the way. And I think he worked with me, just a handful of times. And then he got really fascinated with VR technology and 360 video. And he was like, I'm going to start in immersive technology. I think this is where we're headed. It's so interesting. It's cutting edge. There's not a lot of competition, and he's got a very strong engineer's mindset. He's a creative guy for sure. He doesn't like to tout it as much, but early on he was like, I need to create a real agency. And in order to do that, I need a creative director. I need a development team. I need XYZ. I need an artist. And so he reached out to me and was like, hey man, I just want to pitch something to you. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But I always love working with you. I love your writing. I love your directing. And I was wondering if you would be interested in just being my creative director. Like, I'm launching this creative agency, and I would love to be able to say I have you as my creative director, and, I'll add you to the website. You can put it on your resume, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's winning. And then anytime I get a project, I'll come to you and you'll be my guy. And I was like, yeah, cool. He had me at, I love your writing. I was in directing.
I was going to say, what's the downside? That
yeah, because I've never had anyone come to me, out of the woods and said, Wes, I like your directing enough. I like your writing enough that I want, to hire you to do just that. You don't have to do anything else you don't want to do. Just I'll produce, which again, you have me at I'll produce.
I know.
And so, yeah, it was just this random thing. And I think, and he knows at that point for sure that I don't do things half-heartedly. Like I can be very obsessive about my work. Like, I'm in the middle of finishing a demo reel. I'm making a demo reel for a speaker. And, to talk to me about it, you would think I'm at the end of a Kubrick style movie like that I've been working on for 2 years. I just take everything so seriously, which, can be my Achilles as well. But I don't go halfway. Like, I pull out stops for whatever I'm doing. And I think he appreciated all those things combined. Weird.
That's
weird.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's like, life is what happens when you're planning life, so like, yeah, you just gotta, whatever comes at you, kind of roll with it. That's awesome. Thanks for that explanation. I mean, I kind of knew that a little bit, but the idiosyncrasies of the little things of details of all the things you got to think of about 360 is like, that's crazy.
It's so wild. And I think the other thing that really caught me off guard is I've kind of gone through life assuming that everyone likes the same stuff that I do in terms of the things that I'm really passionate about. I just kind of assume everyone else likes doing those things. Everyone likes writing, right? Because you're telling a story. Who doesn't like telling a story? Everyone likes directing, right? You're the one on set with the vision. Like, who doesn't want that? Actually, there's a lot of people who don't want that, who don't enjoy it. Like, I think a lot of people would enjoy directing like once because it's interesting and you do get to be the visionary director. But the process, if you don't love that entire process, you're going to be like, that was fun, but you know what? That's not for me. Like I like moving on to other stuff at a certain point, and you don't get to do that with directing. It is a whole process, and I love it all. Like we've been saying a lot lately anyway, that you really have to love the process, and I do. I love the writing process. I love the storyboarding or shot listing process. I love scouting locations and finding out, does this work? Does this tell the story that's in my head? I love being on set and working with people and figuring out a scene and reworking it when it sucks. And that's the urgency of it all, because time is ticking. You got to make your day, all that. I love getting in post and being terrified of, I didn't get it. I screwed up on set and now it's too late and now I got to make do. And then finding out you're right. And then even better, finding out you're wrong. It's all there.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, awesome, and it's awesome. I love it all. And then I love walking away when it's finally freaking over.
And then moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And then you get excited about it all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for all the details. Yeah, so today we are covering Barbarian. So if you haven't seen it, pause this episode and go watch it. I believe it is streaming on HBO. Is that right? Or Netflix?
Correct.
HBO. Yeah. So because we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff.
We're going to dig in. We're going to look at some of the cinematography, a little bit of the camera work. Definitely talk about the story and the writing, the way, they play with the audience. As well as some of the directing, specifically ambience and tone. I think that's heavy in the director's toolkit, especially with a horror film, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. A woman staying at an Airbnb discovers that the house she has rented is not what it seems. Written and directed by Zach Cregger. Featuring Georgina Campbell as Tess, Bill Skarsgård as Keith, Justin Long as AJ, Matthew Patrick Davis as the mother, Richard Brake as Frank, and the cinematography by Zach Kuperstein.
Hey, the laundry's still in wash. But I thought, I'm wide awake, so it's gonna be a bit nut. I thought I'm gonna have some of this here wine, but I didn't want to open it before you got out of the shower, because I know you didn't drink your tea, and I totally get that, by the way. I mean, you don't know me, and this is a really weird situation. It makes total sense, but I thought that you might want some of this. But if I open it while you weren't here, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Jesus Christ. I thought you wouldn't want any if you didn't see me open it, so I waited.
I'm good.
That was the That was a trailer?
I guess. Just a clip. It was just a clip they had available. Yeah.
Okay. It's so good.
I love that. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
Also love how they frame it, because, they put the wine in the two glasses massive, like it's right front and center, and we're all thinking it. And now he's finally saying it. This is a weird film. And I'm curious if the humor was lost on you, or if you actually laughed at some of these really crazy WTF moments.
I didn't laugh at any of it.
Really?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, there were, that scene, for example, is it's a great example, because what it did was it lightened everything a little bit. It didn't ever make me laugh. There was not a moment when I laughed in this entire movie. I mean, okay, maybe with Justin Long, there might have been one or two moments where I did laugh.
Okay.
But I don't even think I laughed. I think I was just like, okay. It just lightened the mood a little bit, because I went into this movie knowing nothing,
which is, I think,
absolutely
the best way.
nothing.
Yeah,
is the best way, right? And which is why I really, like, if you haven't seen this movie, please pause it and go watch it, because but I didn't know who the Barbarian was. I didn't know why it was called that. I didn't know. And honestly, I think I know who it is now, but I was just stressed out the whole time, because Skarsgård has this way of like seeming creepy, but seeming also not, and very lovable. And he's a beautiful man to look at too, at the same time. He's creepy and beautiful at the same time. I think it's because I know he played it. He played
Pennywise.
Pennywise, which he's fantastic at.
Oh God.
But anyway, yeah. So I thought that scene was great. He was brilliant in it, and his delivery is perfect, and her response is perfect, and it was really cool. At first I was kind of like, this is a weird situation. I don't know if I buy it. But then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what, they kind of set this up really well. Like, she's never been there to Detroit. It's Detroit, right? So there are parts of it that are really rough. It's at night and it's raining. So she hadn't seen, the area, she hadn't seen that it was so dilapidated and run down. The house that she walked into seemed fine. It was a small house, but not that bad. It looked really nice inside finally when she got in there. It's a scenario that I'm sure has happened before, where an Airbnb gets double booked, right? There's a guy who seems like he could maybe be creepy, but at the same time is still easy on the eyes, and he's really sweet. And offering. So yeah, it seems very like, okay, you can maybe let your guard down, but I also know, they have to, as they're making this movie, they have to understand everybody that's watching it knows it's a horror film. Mm-hmm. So you're not making it for the people that are in it. You're not making it for the characters in it. You're making for the people who are watching it. So you have to like make it not, oh my gosh, there's a creepy person in the house, I'm going to run upstairs. No, You run for the front damn door. Come on. Let's not beat that trope into the ground. And there were a couple of moments that I thought, like, what, just leave, just leave, he's going downstairs to check it out. No, just leave. Right. Like, that was the only moment though, like I honestly, like, even her going back into the hallway, she felt for him, like she was.
You could see that internal struggle of, I know I should leave, but I would hate myself if I abandoned this guy in this creepy, freaking place.
And they beat that into the ground again after AJ goes in.
Yeah.
Or she gets out, but AJ is trapped, and she will not leave. She's like, I cannot leave him down there. I cannot leave him down there. But that's why this whole reason I asked you about 360 at the beginning of this episode was because I would love to watch this in 360. Can you imagine, like, following AJ as he's running with his phone light, because they do it so well, because you can only see wherever the light's aimed. So he's like running forward to see where he can run, but then he's got to look back and then forward and then back. Can you imagine like that being 360, where I can look back while he's running forward, and like, oh my God. And the before he finds the room where the guy is dying or laying in bed, and where she, the mother kind of creeps into sight and then back into the darkness, it was such a, God dang, it was such a great moment. It was such a great moment.
Because it's so barely, right? Everything is so dark and it's almost impossible to see the details, but they're just there on the edge of, total blackness. And you just barely see her start to come forward, and then they are so patient with that shot, because it could be very tempting to just kind of cut away to his reaction, or just have her move a little faster. But it's like a good 45 seconds of her easing in and then being like, oh, F that. And she eases away, and you're like, what's behind that door if even she isn't going to go near it? And it's such great, wonderful tension.
Yeah. The one section that I did laugh at a lot is when he finds the room and he starts measuring it for square footage to sell the house. I thought that was so good and such a light touch because, you know, if he's not stressed out, we're not stressed out.
Yeah.
Like that's how it felt. It felt like, oh, he's just blah, 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 you know, bouncing around. Like, I'm going to measure this death room and see if maybe, you know, I could get another couple grand out of the house. It was so good. And then when he finds the door behind it, he's like, oh, he's so excited. He's measuring the steps down. It's just so good. I absolutely, I loved this movie. I loved it. I thought it was really great. I'm not, you know, crazy about horror films, but I loved how there were sections, right? And after, what is Skarsgård's character? Keith. After Keith dies and we cut, and we think that maybe Tess died too. Like you just assume that they're both dead, right? And then we cut to AJ, you know, just in California, tapping his, you know, steering wheel, driving down the road. Not only is it a great moment to cut away to give relief, right? It introduces a whole nother section and you're thinking, okay, this is going to tie into that. It's got to. How is that? You know, so now all of a sudden you're thinking, you know how they say, you know how they say a lot of times put your heroes in a situation where you can't imagine them getting out, right? Well, instead what they do is they put you in a situation that you can't imagine how it ties into the situation you just saw. And so it's basically, we get a whole nother story in this movie, which felt really cool. It felt really like, it didn't feel disjointed because it all came together. And they gave great detail on AJ and his character and what he's going through at first, you know, because I felt sympathy for him at first because I'm thinking, okay, he might be a little bit of a douchey actor, but at the same time, you know, he's surprised at this. So I'm just going to assume that he's maybe more innocent than, you know, because that's just, I'm an optimist. And then we find out, no, he kind of is a douche, you know, and he did that. And because he even admits it basically to his friend in the bar. Yep. And so they give you a little bit and then they give you a little bit more and they give you a little bit more until finally at the end, he proves who he really is when he throws Tess off the water tower. And so then when he dies, you're thinking, oh yeah, you deserved all of that. You're such a pile of shit. You completely do. But even throughout everything, they're like, there's a reason why all this stuff is there. There's a reason why it happens. There's a reason why okay, so Tess is alive. The reason is because this is a mother. Like she wants, all she grew up on, like this film, this breastfeeding film. That's all she ever had. And so she wants to keep Tess, right? Or whatever's down there, she wants to keep it, right? And unless you're freaking out. And if you freak out, she kills you, right? And what she did for Keith. She killed Keith. Anyway, I just thought it was really well done and really well put together, and all of the pieces kind of like fit for me. I did question a little bit about the cops of like, would they really be that aloof? I mean, unless they were in on something and they knew about something, maybe they knew about the house and they just knew to stay away. You know, I can't imagine that being the case. Yeah. But the other homeless guy knew about it and knew that she came out at night and that she never went into that building and all this stuff. I'm not sure about the cops, but if you have an explanation of that, I'm all ears. Other than that, I loved it.
I don't know that I have a strong explanation for it. And I've been chewing on it. I don't have any notes for this, but just trying to put together all the thematic elements, you know, into some kind of cohesive structure or plot or statement. And if we look at this, you know, from, you know, whatever, 30,000 feet, point of view, it's a lot of, men and women and how they experience the world. If we think chronologically, you have this Frank, this, old guy in the 80s, kidnapping women, raping them, having their kids, apparently having kids with his kids, then having kids with them, right? Copy of a copy of a copy. And then you start saying, okay, no one really gets out of this film doing okay. All the men meet a pretty brutal end. Obviously, Frank kills himself, right? Whether that's because he's just miserable or probably because AJ's over here talking about the cops are going to be swarming. And he's like, yeah, I don't want to be here for that. Goodbye. But, and like you said, AJ meets a very justifiable end, having his literal head split open. But even Keith, right? He's our one good guy. The entire movie, he ends up being the only good guy, even though, like you so well stated, like he's also kind of creepy, but you just can't figure out what the deal is with this guy. And it's commenting, I think, on what Tess was saying early in the film about the way men and women move through the world are completely different. If she had gotten there first, there's no way in the world she would open the door for him.
Great point.
And even if he did, if she did, he wouldn't have thought twice, because why should he? Right? I'm a guy. I get away with stuff. I don't have to think about this stuff. And then you kind of paint all that onto these Detroit police officers, and God only knows what they see day in, day out. They get called away for a shooting. It's not like, hey, there's a drunk driver over here, which would, be rough enough for a cop to deal with. But literal gunfire, like, okay, we got to go towards the gunshots. I'm sorry about your broken window and whatever crazy crackhead things you're going through right now, because they're so jaded after living and working that area that's all they're assuming. They're assuming this is exactly what it looks like to us, like every other thing. And having them address her the way they did is rough, because that's a tough thing to write, on the page and make it feel true. And for me, it felt very true. Like, how would I react if some dirty woman runs up to me saying that she just escaped being a prisoner? Do you have ID? I don't have anything. Well, your story is looking really good by the second.
Wes, if Georgina Campbell, I don't care how dirty she is, walks up to you, you are entertaining anything she says.
Well, yeah.
Aliens came down.
We're gonna get those aliens down.
Yes, exactly. They're in her pocket right now. Oh, really? Okay, show me. Yes, ma'am. I'm listening.
So true. No, you're right.
You can't dirty her up enough.
But there is. I love that he did the thing. He was trying to do all the things we say we want characters to do in a horror movie, right? Don't trust the guy in the house. Don't go in the house. Don't go. And we are now feeling all the compulsion to go against those instincts. And it feels true. It feels honest. It feels like, yeah, we've bonded with this guy, Keith, right? He likes jazz. He's a jazz artist. We're probably going to interview this guy for the documentary that I'm hoping to land. And every inch that she gives up, you're like, I get why she did it, because we also saw those defenses, those walls, like, nah, I'm not doing that. Like, screw that. Well, crap, I'm locked down here. Let me just look, because maybe there's an exit. And of course, as soon as she realizes there's no exit, quite the opposite. There seems to be death. Like, she bounces. And so it felt like, yeah, she has to call the cops. Why? What sane person wouldn't call the cops after experiencing what she did? But then we have to experience every movie, right? No one ever does the right thing. They always go back for the dog. Like, if you had put a dog down there and she went back, now I'm rooting for her to die, because as much as I love dogs, there is no dog on this planet worth a human life. And I'm sorry, I'm going to stand by that. And instead, you got to put a person down there, and it's got to be a person that we like. And even there, at his final moments, we're still starting to question him. We're still starting to be like, I don't know about this guy until literally he's getting his head cracked open. Then you're like, you know what? Keith is okay.
I'm cool with that. You know what? I'm cool with that. Yeah.
I'm good with Keith. He was an okay guy.
But then after that, the whole moments that Tess has with the mother, as gross as they are, is kind of beautiful and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
In those last few moments, you know, and for them to be able to pull that off, honestly, is really like, it's a testament to the actual story, but to the story that led up to that moment. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't really have anything else to add to that. I just thought that was really interesting.
It is interesting because this movie plays with two and now a third very strong tones, like the tone of horror and suspense and what's behind that door. And then this other tone of comedy. Like I got to see this opening night, like I think I saw it on a Thursday night, so not even at the weekend. And it was a packed crowd, which is a dice roll for me. Like some crowds are amazing, and sometimes you just have that one person in the back who's laughing at all the wrong times, and it's just like, hey buddy, get on the page with everyone else. Hold on, isn't it funny how like if one person does something it's annoying, but if 100 do something it's actually like great? That's so true.
I just wanted to point that out. Like, don't be that one person, okay? Nobody else is laughing. Do not laugh, okay? I don't care how funny it is.
And it was an amazing crowd because we all were experiencing this, you know, in sync. And that moment where where the woman comes out of the darkness, crushes a skull, and then screams, and then we cut to black, we all erupted in laughter. And it was just so weird and like, what did we all just experience? Because up until that point, right, we're playing this whole game of, is Keith the one, right? And this is where I think he does such an incredible job of playing with the audience, because we open on this guy named Marcus calling her phone, and she denies his call twice. Who is this Marcus? Who is this guy? We never find out, of course. And that's why, you know, I think throwing a bunch of stuff at the audience early on can disrupt our compass. It's just like, we don't know where we are anymore, and we're trying to figure it out. Just give us a little light. And then we get into this house with this guy who's clearly not trustworthy, right? Everything he does is suspect. He's very nervous. He's very anxious. Does he really have a reservation? We have these questions of, is he just saying he booked it? Or is he squatting? Did he drug the tea? He didn't open the wine, but there's ways to drug wine. Like, I feel like I've seen movies where you take a needle and you can push it through the cork, and now suddenly it looks like the wine's never been opened, when in fact it's full of whatever pee, cat pee. And then right, you have this big dramatic shot of the tea emphasizing what we were already thinking, like, I don't trust that tea, please don't. And then he just points it out, everything the audience is thinking, like, here we are, big shot of tea filling the frame. And so we're just asking this question, is this our horror villain? Is it Keith? Is he putting on an act? Right? Does he already know about the tunnel? And he's just doing such a good job of being aloof and creepy and this X factor. And then once we have that really nice night with him, right, where it's so funny to say it that way, like, we had a really wonderful time with Keith, didn't we, everyone? And you just feel like, okay, no, this guy is on the up and up. She trusts him, but then she falls asleep and there's these weird noises, the door's open, he's having this nightmare. Is that an act? Is he? And then we see, no, he's clearly freaked out. And so now we're like, maybe it's something he does in his sleep. Maybe this is one of those multiple personality things, and we just don't know where it's going. But then we wake up in the morning, he's left us note, and we're like, I think it's fine. Everything's fine. And then she steps outside, and I just have this moment of like, where is this going? What are we doing here? Like, what is happening? We think Keith is okay. She survived the night. She's interviewing for this cool jazz documentary. what's the danger? What's the point? Who's the barbarian? And then she gets home, right? Finds the tunnel. Keith is acting weird again, right? He's acting suspicious. Does he already know about the tunnel? Is he part of this? Right? He's trying to keep her from leaving. He even physically blocks her just to try to calm her down. And then, he goes down and disappears. And we're like, is this him trying to lure him? He's suspicious all over again. And she goes down there because she's still convinced he's okay. And he's still playing with the audience she goes into the creepy camera room. And now we're like, okay, she propped the door open for the hallway, but is now this door going to shut? Is that part of the trick? And so we're kind of waiting for this door to slam shut, and it doesn't. We're like, okay. She goes down the hall, and now she's hearing him scream for help. We're like, no, don't do it. Don't help him. That's a trick. He's gaming you. And then she finds him, right? And he's over here trying to get her to go deeper into the tunnel. And we're like, oh, he's in on it for sure. And then you have that beautiful moment of him getting his skull split. And we're just finally like, you know what? That guy's okay.
He's not really okay.
He's not. I mean, he's not doing well, but my feelings about him are okay. And then we cut to AJ on the PCH singing this ridiculous song. I have no idea what that song is, but it's absurd. And he is completely invested in it. And it's just this great WTF moment of what is happening right now? How does this all come together? I don't understand. And that was another big laugh for the audience, just kind of imbibing like the chaos, because when that whole sequence pops off, the tension couldn't be higher. And so the relief valve is just waiting for some kind of escape. And when you give that to a room full of anxious people, like everyone's just laughing their asses off because it feels good to have the moment lightened. And it was a wonderful.
And you're laughing. You're laughing not because it's funny,
right? You're
laughing because you just you were. It's almost like shock laughter.
Yes,
like you just don't 100%. Know. There's It's like going from a sauna, jumping into like ice water or something. You just can't. It kind of takes your breath away, and you don't know. Your body doesn't know how to react, so you do something weird like laugh.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. And then we're like, okay, who is this guy? AJ. Oh, he's an actor. This is his agent calling, and now he's being accused of rape. He's losing his show and his finances. And the more we kind of learn about him, the more we realize, yeah, he did it. Like, yeah, you're clearly guilty. And yet we find a way to start to kind of relate to him and sympathize to some degree. We're like, this guy's lost and he's looking for his way out, symbolically. And then of course, literally, but, it's just interesting. And then there's the laughter of his kind of cavalier attitude with the tunnel, right? Measuring it. And it's just so absurd. There's a lot of laughter there. Like the audience was cracking up. And of course, that whole sequence underscores everything that Tess was saying early on about women's attitude about safety versus men. Because you have this dude who could not be less, concerned about these weird tunnels, which I believe... I want to say I've listened to a couple of interviews with Zach, and I'll tell you what I learned from him, which will be really fun. I think you'll love it, Todd. Some of the stuff he has to say about making this thing. But
oh, cool.
But it's just him, AJ, that is, having this really, nonchalant attitude about his safety, and it just he's making Tess's point in so many ways, not just the accusations against him, but also the way, he's conducting, himself with his own personal safety. And then of course, what I found really, really funny, I can't remember if the audience laughed at this, but is he's running down these creepy tunnels in the creepy camera room that he's measuring. And the only thing that triggers him is when he finds the video of the breastfeeding, and he's just like, ugh. It's like, really, bro?
Yeah, like even the like the alcove with the cages.
Right.
He just starts measuring it. Like it's just, what the hell is wrong with you?
But it's breastfeeding. That's where we draw the line. Oh, it's such
Yeah.
a great
gosh.
kind of mockery of the bro, right? The, I don't know, frat bro mentality of life. He's just the embodiment of it, and it's just perfect. But then we, of course, have that next WTF moment where he falls into the pit. And like you said, we find out, oh, crap, Tess is still alive. Like, what is this movie? What is happening? And then we have this next shot cut to the 80s. And it's such a great moment because that first segment, everything in the previews, everything that I knew about this movie was, this is just a movie about those two characters, Keith and Tess. And then it broadens to AJ, which is weird. And now you're like, when are we going to find out what the story is? And then we have this like 5-minute sequence in the early 80s with Frank being like the worst embodiment of humanity possible. And of course,
Which, by the way, just to add, is like the really good dichotomy there is the color. It's so saturated. The greens and the reds and the blues, they're just they pop so much, which is it's really great because it's almost like you might see this as like a pure era, right? Before all the downtrodden, the disheveledness of this part of Detroit, right? This is like the heyday of it, where everyone lives on this beautiful street and the yards are taken care of, the houses are in good shape, and the sun is, beautiful in the sky. It's super blue, and everything. And yet there's this like dude Frank, who just, so anyway, that's an important, because like my eyes look at this as pure, as untainted, undisheveled, as opposed to the current day with all the houses are dilapidated and everything. So
that's a really good point, because you combine that with the aspect ratio shifting to this more 4:3, all right? And we have these really wide angles so we can see everything. It feels aged, yet it feels, like you said, pure. The saturation is just on the brink of being too much. And it's like this perfect judgment of a bygone era of, it looks the part, but underneath it all, there's really dark stuff. There's evil, and it's being perpetrated by your neighbor, and whatever, maybe in the same house that you stay in now, that same evil was present, right? And it's really like strong storytelling. But it finally gives us a backstory, a rough idea of what we're dealing with, right? It's a psycho kidnapping women and having babies. Oh, crap. And then we move into this sequence, right, where AJ will not play along. He will not suck on the baby bottle, which is another great kind of WTF, like, she's what? And then, but by that point, we're starting to piece it together too, between the video, her general appearance, and now this baby bottle. We're like, oh my God, this is like a crib, and she's trying to emulate what she saw. And then of course it's reinforced by Tess. She's like, don't you get it? She just wants a baby. Just be your baby. And he won't play along because he's AJ, and that gives her an opportunity to escape. And that whole escape sequence, I think, is just genius. Like her breaking the glass window, and crawling out, right? I love kind of cringing at the thought of her catching the jagged edges of glass going out of the window. It's just, it's another one of those, mess with the audience, and our empathy. And then we also have that, the homeless guy in the abandoned house, right? Who's there to help her. And she goes back. Oh, and this is so good because she goes back to help AJ. And what does AJ do? He shoots her. Like,
yeah.
And it's so good. That idea is brilliant because it reinforces AJ, right, as a selfish idiot, but maybe he's changed. It gives him an outlet to maybe demonstrate his contrition and his ability to change, right? Because he's trying to help now and fix it. He picks her up. He's not just going to run and be like, oh, you're going to slow me down. It's like, no, I need to do the right thing. He picks her up. They get out. They go stay with the homeless guy in the abandoned house thing. And this guy becomes kind of our exposition, right? We get some backstory of, oh, she's just a crazy lady, right? She's a copy of a copy of a copy. And you're like, oh no, that's not good. And it gives us this beautiful moment of truth for AJ, realizing he's a bad person, or maybe he's a good person who's done some bad things, but he can fix it. He can change. And then like moments later, like you said earlier, right? Nope. He flings Tess from the water tower. And what's even better is when he gets down and finds out she's still alive, he acts like it was an accident and almost like it was her fault, right? Which is exactly his attitude towards the rape allegations, which at that point, you can't help but be like, yeah, fine, we weren't there, we didn't see it, but this dude absolutely raped that girl. There's no question. And it's just really strong, like, and to your point, that third tone between the tension, the comedy, we at the very end have this very heartbreaking tone of, you know, we feel bad for this woman who did nothing wrong, and she's a victim of circumstance, and she did effectively what she was taught. Like, this is what she saw growing up. This is how people treat people, whether that's the brutality side from her father or the gross nurturing side, you know, from the baby video. This is how you treat babies, not how you treat full-grown adults. And it's just a distorted worldview embodied. And I don't know if there's any statement beyond that other than Tess had to do what she had to do to survive. It wasn't about necessarily judging that woman. It was about, I'm sorry what happened to you. That cannot happen to me. And therefore, I need to kill the old way. And I think this is where you could kind of extract whatever lesson you want. But if I were going to extract one, it would be something along those lines of, I'm sorry about what happened to you in the past, but we need to move forward. And we need to do it with our safety in mind, with our own personal safety in mind. And if that means breaking some eggs, well, they shall be broken. And yeah, strong, really. And this is the fascinating thing. I've heard one or two interviews. I'll see if I can find him. I think he was on DGA and maybe even Script Apart. And so that would be back-to-back weeks. I've been just hungry lately to listen to directors talk to other directors about their work. And so I've just been devouring all these interviews that I have been sleeping on for, I guess, the last 5 years. And so I've heard Zach Cregger talk about making this thing a couple of times. And the 2-3 things that I pulled out of it, one, Barbarian really doesn't mean anything at all. It was a working title. The only reason he pulled that as a working title is because it takes place on Barbary Street. And if you live on Barbary, you're a barbarian. And then he was like, anything beyond that, it's you. You can look at it however you like, but that's what I had. You know, that was where I'm coming from. And of course, but it doesn't hurt that you have this barbaric, you know, underground dweller. And that's, you know, pretty wild. And then the other really, really cool thing that I keep thinking about is he wrote this as an exercise. He just wanted to sit and write something that was fun for him, that he was like entertained by. And so he got to the end of that first chapter and he was having fun. And then he just suddenly felt like, I'm not having fun anymore. Like, all of this up to this point has been really fun and entertaining. What would be really fun to happen right now? You know what would be cool? As a random woman comes out of the darkness and bashes this guy's skull in. Cool. We're going to do that. And you know where do I go from here? What would be fun? You know what? I think I just want to go as completely far removed as I possibly can from what we just experienced. What could be further than the Pacific Coast Highway with a schmo singing in the car? Like,
Perfect.
it's just genius. I can't remember anything else off the top of my head. Oh, the only other thing
That's awesome.
was the final shot. This is kind of a here nor there thing, but the final shot of Tess leaving wasn't supposed to be at twilight. The shot is her kind of walking down the street with the sun beginning to rise, but it's the first rays of light of twilight. And it wasn't really supposed to be at twilight. It was still supposed to be dark. But it was the last day of shooting and they ran out of nighttime. And so they just had to get what they get. And that was that. It's a beautiful shot. And it's funny because I would have assumed it was completely intentional because it symbolizes everything else that's happening in the story, right? She's leaving. It's a new day, survival, all those things. It was just happenstance.
I love that.
Crazy.
I love that. I love that writing note of oh, I'm not really having fun. Okay, what else would be fun? Oh man, yeah, this is because I think that when you look at like a big long dark or a small dark hallway, you think about a creature walking out of it. I mean, I do. I definitely do. But for it to be some like creepy woman naked, like that's okay, that's interesting. And then to kill him and then not to get out. Oh man. Okay.
But talk about painting yourself into a corner, right? Like you have to figure out some way to justify all of that. Like, who was that woman? Why is she down there? And then how do we get back here? Like, fine, you want to go to the West Coast from the Midwest. Great. But you got to find your way back there somehow. And it's got to be in the flow of the story in a logical way. And it's really
the pacing is really good. Like they give a lot of information about AJ pretty quickly. It's not, we don't belabor, on a lot of stuff. Like, we hear his agents and stuff, but we just hear them talking. We never meet them. The only person we meet is his accountant when he fires him as a client, basically. And then he's already in Detroit and he's getting in a rental car, like it's pretty quick, but through all of it, we get a lot of, oh no, this is serious, and at some point, when he gets in his rental, it gets more and more serious. At first, his agents are just saying, this is pretty serious allegations and da 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 da. And yeah, you're probably not going to be a part of the pilot, even if it does continue. Okay. All right. Well, then we go to his accountant and his accountant's like, yeah, you've got 3 months. And by the way, I'm not going to work with you anymore. Okay, wow, this is getting more serious. And then he gets to Detroit and his lawyer's like, you're out of the state, dude. And he's like, what? I'm not going to be arrested, right? Right? Okay, now it's like real serious. It just keeps, every moment we have with him keeps getting more and more serious. Mm-hmm. But it goes by really pretty seamlessly, pretty quickly.
Great point. So, yeah. He keeps finding a fresh way to kind of push us a little bit deeper into the story, into danger. And whether that's like a psychological danger for AJ, or physical danger, with Tess, or both when Tess and AJ are both kind of trapped downstairs. Every step, you're right, just kind of keeps pushing us further and further, until we're just like, is there any way out of this thing, which is the best. That's where you want your characters to feel hopeless. There's no possible escape, imaginable. Beautiful. Cinematography wise, not a lot, just interesting camera work, solid, right? Lots of very steady shots, these controlled slow pushes and dolly shots, left, right, these controlled pans, locked off shots, right? We're going to just lock that clip that we played. Those are just simple locked off shots. They didn't move an inch. And even that sequence started wide, moved to mediums, moved to, close-ups. And it's just a really good job of we're earning everything. And they really do a good job too of saving the close-ups for when we finally trust and we can let our hair down. Because up until that point, staying wide makes you feel like there's too much frame, and maybe it's not filled up enough. Maybe something else is going to jump in and fill that frame. But there's a sense of safety that comes in by restricting that information. It almost feels like we don't need to see everything because everything's fine. And it's interesting how you can use that same idea inversely, where sometimes, you go to a close-up in order to create a sense of danger, to restrict visual information from the audience and your characters. And you can play it either way. It's just, how do you set it up and how do you stay true to it and stay in that consistently. And then here they also have intense handheld shaky shots to heighten danger. And so we go from, these really solid, like perfectly still shots of, pushes and pans. And then we go into these handheld chaos, right? The homeless guy running at her. Hey, little girl. And he's saying all the worst stuff like, hey, little girl, come out of that house. It's just like, no, you're not selling me here, buddy. And then, the tunnel chases, I think are all handheld, probably. It seems pretty unlikely that he could get, a lot of camera gear down there. And so I'd imagine that's all handheld, maybe a shoulder mount at worst. But both of those things create very strong contrast that enhances both of them, right? The steady shots feel steadier in contrast to the chaotic shots. And then the handheld shots feel way more chaotic in contrast to those really locked off, controlled shots. Just God, the directing and meeting the writing here is really, really good. That's the other thing. Oh man, I feel like he said that because of the budget on this thing was so low, he kind of got to do whatever he wanted. He could just throw weird stuff at the wall, and they were basically like, yeah, whatever. We're dealing with this other, $150 million movie right now. I'm sorry if your $5 million movie doesn't warrant our full attention. And something along those lines, I think, is what he actually said. And it's really cool. The other, on the directing side, great use of ambience and tone, just flawless. We have this opening shot of the house and Tess pulling up in her car. And it's just the rising choir of screams. And you're just like, oh God, like what is waiting for us in this house? And then it cuts. And as she's trying to get inside the house or figure out what the heck's going on, we have all these music cues echoing the visual elements. And I love this kind of stuff. It's like the lights, she goes back to her car. She's on her phone trying to figure it out. And, she's in her car, and then in the background of the house, we can see a light pop on in the living room. And it's just not a light coming on. There's a boom. There's a very soft boom as the light triggers. And then we rack focus to it, and it adds another little kind of boom. So they're playing with pitch. Like you have this deep bassy boom, and then this kind of lighter, softer boom that coincides with the rack focus. And then same thing, she goes to the porch, and then another light pops on, and we get another boom. And so everything happening on the inside just feels suspect. You're just like, what is going on? And then when she's going down the tunnel, she finds a stairway, and as she's going down the steps, we have this heartbeat in our ears, and it's just, speeding up, and it's getting louder. And then as she gets to the bottom, I love it because it's pounding in our ears, and then it stops, and it creates all this empty space for other sounds of horror, right? And we anticipate something now filling that void in both sound and darkness, because like you said earlier, they do a really wonderful job of practically lighting some of these tunnels with just a flashlight, and that's it. That's the entire lighting setup. We're just going to have this flashlight, and whatever that character can see is now what we can see. That's a great use of just tone to in sync with the cinematography, because to light the tunnel, right? It's a very strong perspective from the character. And we're also exactly as dark as they are. We're in the same amount of knowledge that the character has. And so it creates a strong sense of perspective and location. Yeah, I think this is just an incredibly well-crafted film. And this dude finished this.
Were you surprised that I liked it?
I was like, this is such a wild card because the audience really helped make this a great experience. And sitting it at home, I don't know if it comes to life the same way. And so I was like, man, is Todd going to be like mad at this thing? Because it doesn't do a lot of jump scares. And I think it's arguable whether or not that first kill is a jump scare. I mean, it's certainly, in the vein. But whenever I think about jump scares, and maybe I think you do too, is they're kind of worthless. It's just you jump and there's no extra story behind it. It's just the cat jumping out of the closet, or it's just a reflection of a character that we know and like. And so there's not a lot of that. There's a little bit here and there, but it doesn't rely on that stuff. But I just wasn't sure how you were going to react to some of these really.
I can imagine it being a better experience if I had 100 people around me. Yeah, for sure. But that's a strength of this film. I think that it just stands on its own, even by yourself. You know? Yeah.
And so this guy finished this film, this like no budget, maybe not no budget, it's a little bit strong. I know what a no budget film is. But this rather cheap, studio film, and he is now a hot commodity. I think he got into a bidding war for his next script. It's called Weapons. And the bidding war sounds like, I'll link a story that I read about it, because it was so bitter that it came down between, oh gosh, I'm going to forget. Is it Paramount? One studio, maybe New Line, and another, Jordan Peele wanted it for his studio, for his production company. And it came down really close because Zach Cregger was like, I really want to work with Jordan Peele, but the offer is so good on this other one that if he'll just match it, I'll take it. And he didn't match it. And apparently Jordan Peele was so upset that he fired his manager, who's been with him since before Mad TV. That's like the beginning. Like that would be like me having a manager now and then getting to Jordan Peele status and then be like, no, because apparently Zach Cregger and Jordan Peele have the same management. And so I think he was just frustrated that his manager, didn't fight harder for him or something along those lines. I don't know. I mean, there might be more to it. There's usually, if I've learned anything, in life, it's stories are always more complicated than what's reported. And so it wouldn't be surprising to find out there's way more layers to what happened than just boiling down to that. But it's still really fascinating that, this guy came in, rocked it, and he's being rewarded. Like, he's earned it. Like, I think he's making something like 33 million or something like that, on this next project. And man, I cannot imagine what script would warrant that kind of fight. But I can't wait. Whatever Weapons is, no one knows. It's not being released. It's under wraps. I can't wait. Like this guy's got my full attention,
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot of fun. And if Jordan Peele is that interested in it, I mean, that's saying a lot. Because that guy, I just love that guy.
Yeah, same.
He's amazing.
Same. He gets it. He gets horror, and I love that he's really focused on telling these kind of stories. Yeah. Final thoughts, man?
No, I loved this movie not because of what was in it, but because the way it was told. That's what I would say. Which is really an interesting way to look at like stories, right? If you think about that, it's like it almost doesn't matter what happens. It just matters like how it happens, or like the conduit for which it comes. Is it believable? Is it something that you can relate to yourself? And then if it takes you out of your comfort zone, but then brings you back, and it just has these ebbs and flows. It's just interesting. it makes perfect sense. You know, you saying that he said, okay, I'm bored. What else should happen here? Oh, this could happen. Okay, cool. That makes sense. And that's almost the only way that a film like this can be written, right? I mean, you know, when you just kind of let your mind wander into scenarios, and which is one of the more endearing parts of it, I think. So yeah, no, I enjoyed it.
Same. I would love to see, because it's really easy to tell a story where men are being complete pieces of shit. We have enough examples of it to write infinite stories about it. And I think it would be really interesting to see, what's the inverse of this story look like? Women so fed up with, you know, patriarchal society that they just become the enemy. And I don't want a redeeming version of women being violent. I want a violent version of women being violent, out of whatever motivation you like. Like that guy, Frank, he didn't have any motivation to treat women that way. He did it because he could. And so what does the inverse look like of women doing whatever they can because they can? Like, let's explore that. Mm-hmm. That could be really fun. I feel like that's pretty unmined. And that would be really exciting as a viewer to step into a film and just watch them tee up a bunch of guys, and maybe whether it's a guy as a hero or a woman as a hero, either way, there's a really fun, interesting story to come out of that, both ways. And I'd love to see that. Yeah.
Even if a dude plays a woman, like in this movie.
Yeah, that's right. That is a guy.
It's a guy.
Matthew Patrick. I think he's tall. How tall is that guy? He's
I don't know, but dude,
I'm looking it up.
Like 6'4" or something. I don't know.
Let's see. I want to say higher than that. 6'8".
6'8". Holy cow. Oh my gosh.
Freakishly tall is how the Washington Post called him in 2014. That's hilarious.
Okay. All right.
I hope freakishly never, is an adjective for my description. Unless it's freakishly handsome, Todd.
There you go. I'll take it.
So what are you going to recommend this week?
Oh shit.
Nothing?
I don't know. Nothing.
So I am going to recommend a book that I've been reading. It's funny because I'm reading it because of this movie. And no, it's not Jane Eyre, even though that's on my list to read this year. It's actually Helen Keller. I've been editing our old friend and former boss, Byron Reese. And I've gone through hours of his speeches and footage, and so I just have a lot of his thoughts floating around in my head. And one of his things that he talks about is Helen Keller. And she talks about, being, so if you don't know who Helen Keller is, she was born in 1880. She was born fine, a healthy baby. And then after she was like a year and a half, she got sick and lost her sight, lost her hearing. And she grew up deaf and blind. And eventually she learns how to read and write and communicate to the world. But just imagine, as someone deaf and blind, how do you even begin that conversation? How do you teach someone who can't see, who can't hear? It's a process. And so she wrote a book about it. My God, I'm literally, Todd, I think I'm like 12% into this book because I have a Kindle that tells you the exact percentage. I'm like 12, 13% in, and I'm like, every chapter is just beautiful. It's heartbreaking and it's uplifting. Oh, I think what's really cool about it too is it's appropriate for kids. Like, I can imagine your kids reading this book because the chapters are short. It's written very, very well, but not in this brutal esoteric language that I see so much in the 1800s. And it's a story worth hearing and certainly worth thinking about. Yeah, I could not recommend it anymore. It's Helen Keller, The Story of My Life. And it's just, perfect. And
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking about her because I was imagining how life must have felt like for this woman, this underground chud, this cave human underground dweller.
What do you call it?
Yeah, I think that's what a chud is. Chud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's from an old
Yeah,
movie.
no, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. When I saw this quote, I was thinking, you know what? Yeah, I mean, and I couldn't help but imagine. That's the other interesting thing about this film is that I couldn't help but imagine what these women went through at the hands of Frank, and we never see any of it. You know, we never see anybody in that room. We never see the person who put the handprint on the wall. We never see anybody in the cages. We're just told. And we never even really get a good look at the woman, the first woman, you know, because she's across the street getting in her car, and then he just kind of follows her. I mean, I guess we do when he goes into her house.
But even then, they try to keep her as not prominent in frame as possible. And I was thinking about that because I was like, what's the point of that? And I think it's to try to not focus on the victim through his eyes, because he's looking at her through these eyes of lust. And so the more you're kind of showing her, the more you're trying to think about, why is he targeting her? And it could turn into a really dark thought instead of just focusing on him as the villain. It prevents all these other thoughts of, violence that he's having. Instead, we can just focus on him being a rabid piece of shit.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so Helen Keller having the quote of the day is really great.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Did you find a reco?
No, I was just listening to yours.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I'm good.
I don't think I'm going to recommend anything this week because I haven't watched anything that I really like. And I've just been haven't digested much this week. Okay. To be honest.
How about for your recommendation and the art spotlight, we'll throw in Toby Nwigwe.
Oh my God. Yeah. What is that track that I sent you?
I haven't, is it a brand new one? I'm wondering if it's one I've heard yet. If I'm going to watch it regardless, because every time he pops up, I watch it.
Yeah. Okay. So, that's what I'll recommend. So how do you say his last name? Toby
Nwigwe.
He has this track called I Choose You. I think it's called I Choose You. And it on Instagram, it's just him, in this room, this really I don't know, he has this look that's just so cool and it's so delicate. And the way that he delivered, at first it starts with this guy singing this amazingly beautiful, high pitched, incredible performance. And he's just sitting there and he's kind of like looking over at this guy like, yeah, he's part of my group, but damn, he's good, kind of that thing. And then you're thinking, how can he follow this? And the way that he delivers his performance is just he basically whispers it. It's unbelievable. And then it goes back to these singers, and it's just amazing. And his flow, his lyrics are just incredible, just so beautiful and poignant and amazingly thoughtful. You'll love it. Man. You'll love it. I mean, you introduced me to Toby. Yeah. What months ago, a year ago or something?
Yeah, maybe a couple of years. Yeah.
Maybe a couple of years ago. And I started following him because I thought, wow, this guy's really good, and good in a different way. Because I'm not into hip hop. Yeah. Like, I honestly, there's not a lot about it that I relate to. But this guy is different. Like, this guy, like, there's something about him. And so it was cool to see he was at the Grammys. He was nominated. He didn't win, but he was nominated. And then I saw a video of Busta Rhymes freaking out about meeting him and his wife backstage. Wow. In fact, I'll find the video and I'll send it to you. Busta like literally got on the ground in front of her and like worshiped her and said, "I will not touch you. My queen, you are a queen, and I will not touch you," whatever. And he was just like gushing over Toby and his wife. And there's just such a good message of like the power of family and the power of like having a partner and devoting your life to that partner no matter what, and being a strong parent and father and husband and strong woman. It's just like, I don't know. I just love him to death. Anyway, so I'll recommend that. I Choose You by Toby. Thank you for giving me that.
Well done, man. I cannot wait because I don't think I've heard that track yet. So like, I'm really excited to dive into that. You can check the show notes for that one. Awesome. Well, stay tuned for next week. We still good for this one?
Yeah.
Cool. We're going to take a look at Cyrano with Peter Dinklage and some other heavy hitters in tow. And so take a look at that. I think it's streaming somewhere. I've once again forgot where, but it is on one of the major streaming platforms, whether that's HBO or Hulu. I forget, maybe Netflix or Amazon Prime. But I'll link that. I use justwatch.com to always figure out what's streaming where. And so check that out. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, leave us a note. If there's something you want to talk about, kind of things you find interesting. And while I'm thinking about it, I keep forgetting to do this because, I'm the worst. We did have a reviewer pop up and leave us a brilliant review. This one comes from Chris Dion. And he says, or she says, they say, great movie review and discussions. Why, thank you. Why, thank you, Christian. Always welcome. Yes. Thank you so much. Hopefully this one hit the spot as well. And if you want to leave a note on this one, y'all can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/barbarian.
And our quote of the day, as we mentioned earlier, is from Helen Keller. And keeping in mind, she's blind and deaf, right? Keeping that in mind. Before my teacher came to me, I did not know that I am. I lived in a world that was a no world. I cannot hope to describe adequately that unconscious yet conscious time of nothingness, when I learned the meaning of I and me and found that I was something. I began to think. Then consciousness first existed for me. Such a beautiful, it's amazing. I mean, one thing I can say that I've kind of tried to start really paying attention to is thinking, because I get so bogged down with doing and with even being. Like being present for my kids, being present for my wife, like doing my job, making music, that I forget to just freaking think, right? To just be in my head and allow my thoughts to be created in real time. Like I never, for so long now, basically since I've had a family, where I felt all of this pressure to provide and to be present, to be a good dad, to be a good husband, and a good, worker, or a good artist or whatever, that I stopped using my brain and just for no purpose. Everything has a purpose. Like I wake up and I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do that. And I use my brain for all of it, but it's all driven to something. But to just think, right? I don't do that enough. And I imagine if I didn't have the distraction of seeing or hearing, and I'm just calling it a distraction. It's not a distraction. It's a gift. But if I didn't have those gifts, all I have is my thought. That's all I can do. I have no, and I imagine she lived in that world for so long.
No, worse than that. Because right now, if you lost your speech and your sight, you would still have language. She didn't have language to even think.
She didn't have language.
She had no thoughts, like not in the way that you and I had them. Imagine, we use phrases like getting to know yourself all the time. And the only way you can get to know yourself is if you can express what a self is. If you can express, what knowledge is, what your desires are and why you desire these things. And it without language. And this is the first time I ran across this quote was reading Byron's last book, Byron Reese's book. We've been talking about him a lot for this reason, is and he talks about Helen Keller because he's trying to lay out the case about why humanity is so interesting and so unique on the planet. And I think this kind of idea is why we can look at animals and say they're not people. It's because they don't have language. They don't have the ability to express themselves, or let alone to have thoughts. And it doesn't matter which animal you want to throw, like pigs or dolphins or crows, or anything else. Like nothing else on earth comes close to being able to have language and culture in the way that, we use language to create culture in society. And, we're looking at this, the mother of this film, the underground lady, and she doesn't have any of that. She wasn't gifted knowledge. And without knowledge, this is kind of what we are. It's nothingness. It's just impulses. And reading her book, even in the first few chapters, it's so revealing, thinking about living in a world where you don't even know what love is. Not just you're not able to express it, but you don't even know it as a concept. You're not even remotely aware of yourself as an entity in and of itself. Like it's very animalistic. Like she, sounds like she's describing an animal. If you remove her from the subject and just that description, it's an animal. To not be aware of yourself as a conscious being, like that's just mind bending. And it's because of language and a million other things that, layer onto that. But that's the starting point, the ability to think in terms of thinking.
That is a great point.
Oh.
Wow. Didn't look at it that way. Dang.
It's crazy. It's hard to wrap my mind
crazy.
around.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like the idea of time being everywhere all at once at the same time, like
right.
I can't, or the idea of infinity. Like I can't wrap my head around that. I can't wrap my head around not knowing what I am, not knowing the I, or not knowing love, or not knowing not knowing, the idea of nothingness, right? But there's still something.
There's still something.
You're at and maybe that's the definition of like the difference between a human and an animal. To take it a little further would be even when you don't know that there's nothing, there's still like a crumb there.
Yeah.
Right. As a human being, right? Because she even says, I cannot hope to describe adequately that unconscious yet conscious time of nothingness. So that the conscious part, no matter how small, is there, was there for her, even though it was still unconscious and nothingness. That's crazy.
It's
crazy. And then for her to write a book, like what? And to be so influential,
And to have the wherewithal to describe and figure out those moments of existing before she had contact with the world. Because effectively all her contact was, just impulses and her own selfish desires and the inability to empathize with anyone else. She describes trying to kill her sister. Like, the intention wasn't to kill the sister. It was, something else. It was a selfish desire, and her sister was simply in the way of that. And luckily, the mom was there to save the baby. It was a baby. And just being able to exist in that era for whatever it was, 6 years, 7 years, and then to come into consciousness and then relate to us what that experience was like, is just, it's all really amazing. And reading this book, literally like 40 pages into it, I'm like, yeah, I get why she was a big deal. Like she was the biggest deal.
I'm gonna read that.
I have to. It might be one of the best books I've ever read by the end of it. I don't know what's coming next, but there's a lot of book left, and I just cannot.
Report back to us next week.
I will, sir. I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. This has been awesome. I really enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed your insight, man. And the film is really great. I can't wait Can't wait to see what Zach is going to do next.
Yeah, same here.
So like Wes said, please subscribe, review us wherever you get your podcasts. It all helps. It really does. And if there's a film that you'd like to hear us break down, we'd love to hear from you too. Until next week, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.